You say that in tough times people shop emotionally. When they shop emotionally, do they tend to be
Or
more
they buy lipstick.
oh dear.
They don't buy clothes, they just buy lipstick.
Well, let's just say they take a leap and buy clothing. Do they tend to be more extravagant or less extravagant if they're making that one emotional purchase?
I don't think it's really extravagant necessarily, because I don't think that anyone wants to be perceived as overly flashy, the sort of Marie
Not
Antoinette,
here,
let
right?
them eat
No,
cake.
right.
So I think the idea of an emotional purchase can be interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But I don't think that it'll be interpreted as something ostentatious.
Well, the interesting thing about fashion in Washington, I know everybody always goes, how can you put those two words together? But there is a fashion that's uniquely ours. But what's always amused me about it is either, the kind of that sort of Chanel boxy suit that you see Senate women wearing, and the Laura Bush, that kind of very conservative look that is understated and doesn't overwhelm the person, or it's like really trashy. I mean, we've got the side of us
And
that.
where are you seeing this trashy fashion?
Well, I mean, I can't name names, but there's a
Oh,
a
sure
side.
you can.
There's a side of what you'll go to the party and you'll see somebody in a kind of a garish outfit, and you go, where are they from? They must be from someplace else, and then you go up and talk to them, and they're from here. I mean, it's just I'm being careful here, but I know you know what I mean, and but and then there's a street fashion to Washington too that I think is very interesting, and we never even hear about. There's a whole part of the city that has lots of fashion,
Right.
and actually even among like I see drag queens in Washington who have incredible
Washington has
fashion.
spectacular drag queens.
Yes, right. But
Really
we don't really hear about them. But there are all these little pockets in Washington of fashion. But all that ever really gets commented on is that conservative, safe,
Well, I
serious
think,
face.
Washington is a company town, and everything is overwhelmed by the perception of what are people wearing on the Hill.
Yeah, and in the White
So-
House.
Exactly. So I
And
think,
soon it will be the State Department again
and
too.
I think in many ways that's one reason why people are so focused on the incoming family, because there's, I think, some hope that they can change that to some
Change it
degree.
up for us.
Yeah, but whenever I talk to people about fashion in Washington, they immediately think about what they see on C-SPAN.
Yeah.
They forget the incredible number of universities in
Yes,
Washington,
C-SPAN is not the.
and what students there are wearing. They forget about the entire international community and what those people are wearing. They forget about a world of people who work outside of the federal government. So there's you're right. I mean, there are all these pockets, but what the world sees is
that serious?
C-SPAN Washington.
That C-SPAN chic, but don't try to pronounce it too often. It must be good for you to be working for a publisher who likes fashion. That must make a difference, right, Catherine Weymouth?
It does, absolutely.
And did you also work for her grandmother?
When I started,
She was
Catherine,
still
Mrs. Wren was still there,
and she knew fashion.
She knew fashion, and she really enjoyed fashion. I mean, she embraced it and was enthusiastic about it, and saw it as just sort of part of the whole cultural mix.
And you have that with Catherine too?
And I've not had a chance to get to know her, but yeah, I mean, she has definitely expressed an enthusiasm for it and an interest in it. So it means a lot. And also, it's important that in the style section, a lot of newspapers have a separate fashion section. And I've often said that I actually really appreciate the fact that fashion is part of the bigger style section. Because to me that means that it has to sort of compete with every other story for its space. It has to legitimize itself.
Right.
And it also means that it gets to kind of bump up against stories about film and about music and politics and life. And it's not segregated in this weird way that we so often
Right.
like to segregate fashion.
And you're probably the rare fashion editor who gets to write about all those things anyway. You're not limited to frocks at all. I mean,
I'm really lucky in that regard. I'm very lucky that I don't have to do a top 10 list.
right. And do you think that is in part because you are in Washington, and that if you were in one of the fashion mosh pits like, you know, New York or to some extent LA, but not really, that you would be more constrained in?
I think it comes from both location and my own sort of sensibility and interest.
Yeah.
When I came to Washington, obviously, you know, Washington does not have a big fashion industry. And one of the things I thought about was, how can I write about this industry in a way that engages the local reader? How can I try and make it somewhat relevant to them, make them feel like it actually has an impact on what they do? And the natural choice was, or the natural attraction for me was to look at politics and government and sort of see the way that people sort of interpreted that in that world. And the other thing is that I just, you know, I came to fashion sort of sideways. I mean, I was always interested in writing first. And, you know, not until I was actually covering fashion did I actually look in a fashion magazine. It just was not on my radar. So I think I approach it from the point of view of someone who has always been intrigued by it, but never necessarily
Not a slave to it.
feeling like they wanted to be a part of it.
Well, that's what makes it fun to read you. Now, I need to know, lastly, before we end, did you figure out which of the 3 Prada wallets you were looking at to get? I just want to know.
Did I tell you the sad, tragic state of my obsession with the Prada wallets?
You wrote about it, and you were like, you were beside yourself because you couldn't decide which one to get, and you admitted that you weren't going to have any money to put in it once you bought it, but I thought that could be me, so which one did she get? Because you never announced whether you actually took the leap and got one.
I actually bought the wallet, and I have maybe $20 in it. But
well, that's what
it's
happens.
a lovely
when you,
wallet.
That's what happens when you buy a Prada wallet.
And
but
all
they are
of,
beautiful.
and all of my friends were very happy that I finally bought it, so I would shut up about it.
Well, now don't lose it. But thank you very much. We have a little cupcake for you from Georgetown Cupcake, because probably everybody at your table ate them, and a little holiday treat for you from Georgetown Cupcake. But Robin, thank you. Have a great show tonight at the Corcoran. If you want more of Robin, she will be at the Corcoran tonight. So
God
you can
forbid
have, you can have more Robin. And but I don't think anything compares to the Q&A Cafe. But thank you so much, and good luck. I look forward to reading you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you all
Thank
for
you all.
braving the rain.